Welcome to another episode of the Godfrey Man podcast. Today, if you can see, we have a brand new different setup here. I'm actually hosting in a nice, very nice studio with my friend Andy Cruz. I'm very excited to see you, man. We're actually in San Diego.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for being here. I'm glad you could come and check this out, and also that we could do one of your episodes here.
This is awesome. So very grateful to you. And we go back quite a bit. I'm trying to think how long we've known each other now.
So I was thinking about this the other day. I think it's all the way back to 2009.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I think it's been 2009 because it's actually when I joined BNI.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure if you were already there or you had come into it after that, but it was right around that time.
Yeah, actually, BNI was an organization we co-founded, the Partners in Excellence, with Miguel Contreras. So, yes, I definitely would have already been there, and that was great. Yeah.
Now we host the BNI Partners in Excellence podcast show here. So we have member-to-member interviews that I conduct from this chair here every week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That part I don't think you knew.
No. Wow. Before you used to have to go to meet somebody over coffee. Now you get to meet them on camera.
Yeah, we
Live.
do more in-depth conversations. You know, you have your one-to-ones you meet, but now we have this like real kind of deep dive member-to-member. It's been really neat.
That is cool. Yeah, man. And one thing that I want the audience to know, Andy's a guy that I've always seen you. Number one, your smile is always been classic about you, brother. And as soon as we saw each other, we haven't seen each other in a while. I think maybe a couple
years,
4 years ago, I think, during the pandemic. But seeing you and then embracing that hug, I'm like, dude, that's an Andy hug.
Yeah, it's like being home.
Yes, yes. So I'm really glad, and man, what a great setup, bro. I know you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
You've been involved in marketing and so forth.
Yeah.
So aside from being a great friend, you've got a family. Tell me a little bit about, for the audience, right? A little bit about your family and what you're doing.
So you're here right now in our studio. My family owns this building, and back when everything was kind of like shut down, we renovated this entire place. And one of the initiatives was, let's change our little conference room into a recording studio. Okay. And so that's kind of what built this out in 2022. Okay. And then we really launched like full length episodes and doing this kind of video every day, every week kind of thing in 2023.
Okay.
And so we pump out a lot of content for this specific business, but we also have our own video marketing and production company that does that for other clients as well. Okay. And sometimes my wife is doing voiceover for commercials or quick promos and things like that. It's awesome to have a built-in wonderful voice at home.
Yeah.
As you know, my wife Jen is a accomplished singer, and she also does professional voiceover. So that's been fun. My oldest daughter, she also helps us here. So she actually runs shows when either I'm not here or I'm on this side of the camera. She's helping run shows, and she helps do short form editing as well as short form scheduling and content for some of our clients. And then I have two other girls that are in high school, and they're all in some sort of arts and crafts or music and creativity. Wow. And so it's there's always something like new being made, discussed, something we're sharing cool ideas with each other. And it's all ladies in my house. So me and all the girls.
That's interesting energy, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So the creativity runs in the family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is so cool.
Yeah. I should probably start running in the family again too, because it's getting a little bit, it's been a while, Robert.
I don't know if we're going to go there today, brother, but you and I both, it's interesting. And I've got the coffee because I'm still fighting a little bit of jet lag.
Yeah. I can imagine,
coming here from Florida, but it's great to be back, and again, thank you for hosting us here. One of the things that I do know that just being friends for so long, you've walked with the Lord for quite some time, and I know your faith is important to you, and that's a big reason why I said I got to have Andy on the show, and what better way to do it than in San Diego. And so I want you to share with the guys a little bit about how you came to the Lord, and how long you've been walking with the Lord. And the purpose of this show is really to highlight guys that are walking their faith out. Mm-hmm. You might be a person, if you're listening, that perhaps you just accepted Christ, or you're exploring faith altogether.
Okay,
or maybe you've been walking with the Lord, but you feel like you're kind of stagnant, right? and maybe you feel a little distant, and that happens, right? Yeah. And I think that, I believe part of your story actually, might involve some of that. And as I think to some degree, all of our stories share that similarity.
Yeah.
And I've seen you walk it through, even from afar and sometimes up close, right?
Yep.
And that's what for me makes this special, because you're a guy that has been consistent in his pursuit of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people lose sight of what that means.
Yeah.
Because maybe they think that it's supposed to look a certain way, right?
Yeah, I think that's common. But even as you're setting this up for us to talk today, I'm thinking of all these analogies that I've either used before or people have used with me. And, part of it right out the gate, this early in, I just want to tell people, if you've ever taken a long car ride, it can kind of be like that. There's parts where you're just going 100 miles an hour. 65 miles an hour down the street and the freeway, and you're just cruising for a while. Yeah. And then, you might have a little bit of traffic, and then life stops you for a little bit or slows you down. Mm-hmm. And then you got to exit every once in a while. And I've had exits too, where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pause here for a minute. I don't know am I going in the right direction? I have these questions. Check the map. Okay. You get back on the road. You go again. There's varying speeds. You cover different distances over different periods of time in your life. And faith's a lot that way for me too. And there's times where I've had to go back a couple miles and then return to where I was. Where I was. So you can see there's a lot of cross sections of analogy between taking a long car ride or a cross country trip and having faith that way too. And sometimes people get out of the car. Sometimes people get out of the car and they jump back in. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they go, well, can I trust this car? Is this thing is this going to get me where I'm thinking I'm being told it's going to get me? And so a lot of this has been more of an evolution of my understanding and maturity in my understanding over the course of time as I've gotten older, as life circumstances have changed. When I was younger and you accept Jesus, it is something that's brand new, and you're kind of like learning everything is brand new. Once you are a couple years into that, and then you are getting involved and you're around other people that are either your age or ahead of you, you start to see how there's like anchors of faith, and then there's all the things around those anchors of faith, right?
Yes.
And I will also qualify too. There was a part of my life where I was like beyond curious. I was like, okay, I'm curious, but I'm also going to scrutinize the word, and not in a judgmental way. But let's test the word, right? Even in Malachi, God says, "Test me in this." But he's talking about tithes, but I was testing and scrutinizing the evidence of the word, if you will. And so this led me down, listening to people like William Lane Craig, Lee Strobel, and going, evidence for Christ, evidence for Christianity, evidence for faith. And it's just overwhelming when you look at how much, even if you want to just go to physical, archaeological findings there are for faith that corroborate things in the Bible, you have to start willingly ignore those things in order to maintain a position of it not being true. That makes sense?
Interesting. Yeah, you almost have to have more faith not to believe.
Correct. Well, there's a book like that. There's the book I read about that too. It's called "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist," and it is fascinating because there's things that we I'll put like scientific or like thought leader belief, hope, and faith in that are non-religious or non-biblical, but they have a lower threshold for crossing the test of qualifiability than the things that we say are untrue in the Bible that have a higher threshold of like it's improbability.
Yes,
but we shift the scales for things we want to believe so we can avoid the things we don't want to. Right?
What we want to see and we don't want to accept.
Yeah, and so along the way of all this, there's been so many different like major milestones of being involved in church for a long time, playing drums on worship team, being involved in leadership in that kind of way, leading groups of couples groups, being in couples groups, leading men's groups, leading high school groups when my wife and I were helping train young worship leaders. And so our journey together has had a lot of different phases. My own personal walk has had a lot of different chapters, and it's been very what's the word I'm thinking of? It's been very confidence inspiring, not to like pull the name out of your title, Godfident, but it's confidence inspiring that the word's always going to be there. God will always be there. The distance between God and me is always because of me. It's never because of him.
Wow.
Right? It's always because of me.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as either I'm going down the road at 65 and that's my pace of pursuit for him, or I'm pedestrian kind of like walking on the side, 3 miles an hour, mosey my way. Like that's on me.
Yeah.
Right? He's always there. The road's always there.
Right.
Am I on it? Am I not on it? How fast am I working on it?
Yeah.
And I think that for some people that are maybe new to faith, to address that really quick, is it's going to look the way it looks for you. It's not going to look the same as everybody else. There are going to be some things where you're going to find similarity. You're going to find brotherhood that, oh, this person had this experience or they felt this way or thought this thing. And there's going to be camaraderie in that. And there's going to be some things that are just unique to you. One of the things I think that I would say, especially to men, is that one thing that is shared among men is some sort of pain somewhere.
Yeah.
Some sort of pain point of childhood, disappointment, regret, loss, grief, whatever it might be. There's going to be something that other men share in that as well. And those that are more, let's say, mature in their faith now and can look at that and say, oh, God can cause good out of all things, is a good way to understand that maybe some of the things that were part of your life at that point are leading you towards something else. And how many stories of the Bible is there a male character who has made a mistake, who had something happen to him or whatever, and then comes back, and God's always there. There's redemption, and there's a spiritual maturity coming from said place.
And we know these stories, and isn't it interesting how sometimes we forget?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think again, how much of that is convenience that we forget, and how much of that is just our ignoring that it's there. Because I don't want to accept the truth that I can change. I like feeling this way, or I want to be stuck in my stuff or whatever. Yeah. But that doesn't ultimately help you pursue, and then doesn't help you pursue the purpose that God has kind of bestowed upon you. Yeah. But then that which you'll be judged by too. It's like, what did you do with what I gave you? Right? Will I look at Robert or Andy and say, well done, good and faithful servant? If I've ignored doing the things he's asked me to do, even out of the stuff I might be feeling myself stuck in. Yeah. And sometimes the stuff you're stuck in is your own doing. Sometimes it's things that happen to you or happen around you. And I've got examples of all those. Examples of all those things in my life.
Wow. So what would be an example that when you think back, right, was something that you believed happened to you that you didn't cause yourself?
Oh, I can easily tell you one. From 2017, I was running a business, and I was doing very good in the public eye.
Was this a clothing company?
This is 9010 brand. Okay. Back when we were doing apparel branding. And we had some major clients, and that got us a lot of notoriety. And we were local famous, right? Local in the industry we were connected to, and local here in San Diego. And I fell ill. I had an infection in my leg, and it landed me in the hospital. And there's a lot of details. I'll just smash into the summary, which is I became hospitalized for 12 days. At first, the doctors were like, hey, you're really sick. We're going to have to try to save you. Then we'll figure out if we can save your leg. And then we'll figure out how long it's going to take you to learn how to walk again. Now
and sorry to interrupt, but this infection was something very, very casual, like something that could happen to any one of us. I remember you sharing this with me.
The context is I was sitting at my desk, and I crossed my legs on my chair and kind of pulled myself under my desk. Yeah. But I had a surge protector under the desk that had fallen off, and the little screw that was holding it up scratched my knee. Right. So it was a scratch on my knee from under my desk that it ended up being 24 or 48 hours later. Right. Oh, I'm in the hospital, and they're going to admit me.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I just was like, well, it's just a little scratch. Like, how many times do we go through and we get a little scratch on our hand or something? You're like, oh, it's just whatever.
Wow.
And it just ended up being one of these, and it was originally strep, and then it became sepsis, which is basically blood poisoning. Yeah. And then the medications, one of the medications that I was on in order to try to help me become better, I was having an allergic reaction to, and it was coming out of my pores. Like, it looked like someone took one of those chef, I don't know what it's called. There's a name for the device that when chef make creme brulee, they burn it. It's like a torch. And torch, they torched my body. It was all red and burned. It was it was gnarly. Wow. So this is 2017 this happened, but I lost everything. I lost my business. We had employees I had to let go 2 days after Christmas in 2017 because I was like, it happened so quickly. But the things that happened as a result of that, it like spread fast. And I was like, oh, shoot, we're going to lose everything. And it wasn't me having this negative, pessimistic mindset. It was materially, oh, this is all going to be affected by this because now I'm coming home from the hospital. I'm supposed to be on bed rest for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to be on physical like recovery and recuperate for 3 months.
Wow.
And so everything had to stop and go. And so everything that stopped was I have to tell everybody that we're not going to be able to keep our doors open in January. Merry Christmas. That's crazy.
Wow.
And that like destroyed me because I had employed my friends. I had employed people who had helped me build this company up to this thing, and they were all along for the ride. And then boom, it stopped. I had to file bankruptcy and start over again. I had so much business debt, some of which I had personally guaranteed. That was the nature of things at the time.
Yes.
And I don't think I'd do that again. And now knowing what I know, but that period of time also became very dark for me, where I felt like, why did this happen to me? Why was this allowed to happen? And my very loving wife was like, remember when you started this? You said you were going to do this, and then it became like this completely other thing. And this thing over here that God was saying, like, this was your hype and your momentum and all the things you were totally motivated and excited to do. The second this opportunity came up, it shifted your entire thing over this way, and it became distant from him. Wow. And I'm not going to say that is why it happened, but I'm not going to ignore and say that it didn't happen. It's a possibility. Because what was originally prompted upon me to do 9010 brand was a giving campaign towards the clothing industry, where we have a part of every sale we give back to charities and all this thing, which we ended up still doing, but we tried it in a different how. So the how we did changed, and that how was disconnected from the original intention. And when I look back at it now, I'm totally comfortable saying that I'm pretty sure that the reason it all happened was out of just disobedience. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I can dwell on it more, but I've already done all that work.
Yeah.
You know, I've already yielded all those things, given up those things, laid down those things, however you want to phrase it. And I'm doing things now that are so similar, but in a much more like followed kind of way.
Yes.
Like, God, who is it we're working with?
Yeah.
What are we doing for them? What are you asking of us to be in this situation, in this scenario? And how can this honor you? And those things were elements of what we used to do, but I was closed off from certain types of input at the time, and that ended up being one of the detriments, I believe.
The voices around you?
Some of it was the voices around me. Some of it was just me wanting to do things what I was saying I thought was God's way, but turned out to just be my way.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is the way I think it should go. I was like, well, I was like, I think God's telling us to do this. And it's like, no, that's just me telling myself that. Yeah. And then that happens. I
hear you.
Yeah, and you know, I can clearly I can sit here and say like that's a terrible mistake I've made. And then I don't mean terrible to like conflate it and make it over dramatic. It's that, you know, it had a consequence to my business. It had a consequence to the family. Yeah. And I had a physical consequence for that. I had to start over financially. Had to start over like relationally with so many different things.
Yeah, I bet.
And I was just a hard person to be around when you're standing in the ashes of something that you had like dreamed of, and you had to burn it down. You're standing in the middle of your dream one moment, in the middle of the dream's ashes the next. And I don't think I knew what to expect, and my emotional processing and my spiritual processing was just very challenging during that time.
How did you recover? How did you get back on, you know?
There's so many layers to that. Part of it is just the physical work itself, like being dedicated to get up and go to physical therapy and do the hard stuff. Like it's going to hurt. You're going to cry some days. It's going to be painful. You're going to be exhausted. You may be of zero use to your family today, but you still have to do the work. There's that part. I had to spend a lot of time by myself, like walking, praying, and having separation from things that would make me think about what had happened because it was just too raw and sensitive. And because again, it's like having a vision, birthing a dream, and it's like, oh, I have this this kid and it becomes an adult or an adolescent and it's maturing and it grows and it's adult and then it dies. And so I was actually going through the stages of grief.
Mourning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that actually until I had begun going to a counselor.
Oh, okay.
And I was seeking Christian counsel at the time.
Okay.
Faith-based counseling.
Got it.
And that was extremely helpful too.
Yeah.
And so, there's another part of this that is I'll mention later too, because there's a time and a space where that faith-based counseling is the on-ramp to getting back on the road of the life that God has for you. Okay. And there's other times where in a moment's notice, because of Holy Spirit, we can just pray things into being. We can just pray things into correction. Yes. We can pray things into healing. Yeah. We can pray things back onto the path they're supposed to go. At the time, though, that was not awaken in me to do for myself. Now, people around me were praying, my friends, family, my wife certainly was praying for me. Actually, I think most of the guys like, dear God, what is with this man? Amen. No, I'm just kidding. No, my wife's a very powerful prayer. Oh. She is extremely powerful, and she has such high discernment. And it's why actually she knew something was gonna happen.
Isn't that interesting about our wives?
Well, she is the helper.
That's right.
She is a helpmate in the way that the helpmate is described in the word. Yeah. And my me not bending my ear to that with the weight at which it should have been is a contributing factor to why it all came apart.
Interesting.
I could have let that have more weight on the scales of my decision making, on my considerations of things, and I didn't. And there's a consequence for that. Right? I mean, you can go all the way back to the Garden of Eden for that. Right? And I'm not saying blaming men or women particularly, but I'm saying like Eve was a helpmate. Right. And the intention of that was way different than what happened. Yeah. And there was a poor decision made there, wasn't there?
I think so. Yeah.
So part of going through this whole process was the physical part. Part of it was the emotional, mental, and then the spiritual part, like getting connected back into a group of men and a church that was going to prompt and promote faith and healing and spiritual recovery, as well as being bold in faith and leaning into the truths of the word again, because I would read the word, but it wouldn't land. It wouldn't connect like it used to. It's like, well, how come I could, a couple of years ago, I could read something, I could be so excited. Man, that's amazing. Like, look at God. So wonderful, so powerful. So, and then get to this place where I'm like, man, I don't even know what this means anymore. Like, well, I'm reading this and I've read it 3 times. I know I should know what this is. How come I don't know how come it's not landing? And then getting frustrated. And so there were those times too where I just had to keep on and be around people who would speak the word. Yeah. Much like the friends who lowered the guys who lowered their friend through the roof for Jesus to heal him. It's like sometimes your friends have to go in battle for you too. Sometimes when you're being stubborn, when I'm being stubborn, sometimes your friends have to show up and go to bat for you, and they did. Like I had people come to my door unannounced and uninvited, and like, we're coming in, and we're going to talk, and then we're going to pray, and you can stop acting like a fool. Wow. Stop ignoring us. When we text you, write me back. Yeah. When I call you, call me back. Yeah. Don't try to hide. Like I was hiding for a little, dude. Yeah. It was. I was not the person that's sitting here talking to you today.
Wow. The upbeat, always positive, right? Happy-go-lucky Andy.
No, I would take anger walks, Robert. Yeah. I would have to go. I gotta leave. I would walk around the neighborhood, and I was just so distraught, and I just had so much anger in my soul and grief that I felt like completely out of control at some points of myself. I don't mean like wildly swinging my arms through a supermarket. I mean like I felt like I could not keep and contain these like wild swings of emotions. And it was disorienting, and it made me like hesitant to go and be around people. And I'm totally comfortable in groups of people, as you know. Yeah. And I skipped family events and activities around people I know who love me because I don't want to be around people. The opposite of like what is typically most comforting to me. Yeah. Wow.
That's amazing. But God, in the midst of all that, had you surrounded by a group of guys that were not just praying for you, but they were pressing into you and kind of going, hey, we're going to love on you, just like those friends that lowered their sick friend. So praise God for that. And I think a lot of times men naturally isolate themselves. I had a guest on the show not that long ago, Pastor Morris, Steve Morris, and he talked about intimacy with God. And he says a lot of guys shy away from that word, intimacy. Like, makes them uncomfortable. I mean, intimacy with God. But a lot of times they think about that in terms of isolation. And some men embrace that during the wrong periods of times and for the wrong reasons. Like, they pull away. Like you said, you didn't want to be around certain people or family or people that actually cared about you, right? And but tell me about what that spiritual recovery looked like.
It was very slow to begin with, and then it got very accelerated.
Yeah.
Part of it is, and I'll use an analogy again, like I'll use football, for example.
Yeah.
There's some work you do that individual players do on their own. Like, they sleep at their own house, they get quality rest. They might even hit a workout on their own. And there's teamwork that they do. You go watch pregame film, you have your meetings during the week. If you're on offense, you work with the offense. If you're on defense, you work with defense, special teams. You break off into little factions, if you will.
Yeah.
And then you have your game on Sunday. And you all show up, and there's plays called, you make adjustments on the field, and you then win or lose at the end. And there's actually numerous accounts in the Bible where that's our experience as well. There's people that are on their own being asked to do something, and they are on their own, or it's one person carrying the weight of a big thing, like Mary birthing Jesus.
Right.
It's one person carrying a big thing, okay? And then you have a one person, I'll use Jonah as another example. Now, Jonah was so disobedient, he had to be taken because he didn't want to go to Nineveh.
Yeah.
God took him there
through
a fish, right? Whale, fish, big fish, small
big
whale.
fish. Yeah.
So, and that's a singular story.
Yeah.
Then you have like the disciples. Okay, there's how many? 12 disciples.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have like a little collection of them,
Yeah.
right? And then you have like, I'll just say like the masses of people that Jesus taught to. Okay, well, then there's masses of people. The fish and the loaves, so feeding masses of people. So there's these like size compartments to all of this.
Yeah.
And even though we cannot compartmentalize God, you can look at the Bible and go, oh, there's examples of this where one person had to do this thing, or it's called, there were a group of people were tasked with this thing, or a mass amount of people were called into, or whatever.
Yeah.
So for me, it was that variety. It was, I have like myself that I had to work on, spend quiet time, journal, write, read, record, and think about and pray about what am I being asked, what am I hearing, and being willing to stop long enough to do that. And that's kind of most guys' problem is right now is, well, if I'm just stay busy enough, it'll all work out. And I'll stop long enough because I want to avoid this whole intimacy, right? And I have to make better strides in this right now even.
Yeah.
And it's a completely separate reason. I'll come back to that. But but in that is sometimes the avoidance there, I think, is it just sounds like you're in my personal space, and I don't want you in my personal space yet. Because I have to be like super vulnerable, and that might make me cry, or it might make me relive some pain. That's also the point in which you can find healing, and you can give some forgiveness, and you can find some restoration for yourself too. So it's kind of like the thing you're hoping to have over here will be accomplished when you do the thing over here you're avoiding, right? So true in anything else. Like, you want to be fit, you're going to have to go do something. You got to work out different. You got to eat different. You got to sleep better. Yeah. You want the outcome of all those things. You got to do the inputs to get the outputs. Yeah. So for me, I had to do a lot of that on my own. Then I had my close friends around me that would, pray, come be with me, invite me to things. And then eventually I started getting back involved with like men's groups, men's prayer, and then, back at church again in the big church, then back on the worship team, playing drums, and now doing worship as a steward of bringing people into worship before a message. Yeah. And that had an entire like track of numerous years.
Wow.
I mean, this is from like 18, and then I started playing drums again back in it was 2018 to 19. And then when shutdown happened, a lot of the churches here weren't getting together, but the one we started going to was, and I started playing drums again in 21. So this is a couple of years this was happening.
Okay.
And my wife's always by my side. She was always praying on my behalf, praying with me, praying for me, journaling and listening, and my kids too. So, by no stretch of the imagination was this some like solo man trip on me. And and I had to overcome some of those same burdens or some of those same barriers that I think men who are watching this might be feeling themselves. Like, I don't want to. Sometimes it's just I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready to. I'll do it when I'm ready. Like how many times we just feel like that as men? Like,
already,
yeah. It's like there's a funny joke that says, my wife keeps telling me to cut the grass. You've been telling me that for 6 months. I'll get to it, right?
Oh my gosh.
But I kind of joking that off, but there's a part of guys that just does that. Like, I'll do what I want to, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's that free will thing. We're like, I will when I want to. Some things are better to do sooner.
Right. Yeah. Or, you just don't want to be told to do it. You just like, hey.
And
I'll do it.
unfortunately, there's another truth. And if there are any women watching this, I'm so sorry that this is true. And maybe for some men it's not true, but for me, I'll bring it to me. For me, this is true. My wife can tell me something, and it's the right thing. And then one of my friends can tell me the exact same thing. I'm like, babe, you won't believe what Robert told me. And she's like, you know what? I've been telling you that for 9 months, and it took one person to tell you this one sentence. Like, do you even remember all the times? She's not belittling me. I'm over exaggerating, but the point is, like, how willing. There's a couple lessons here. How willing am I to listen to my helpmate when she is having a word for me? Am I listening to it and absorbing it or not?
Yeah.
And then it's also the benefit of having guys in your corner who will tell you the truth lovingly, but truthfully, and sometimes it is hard and difficult and pointed.
Yeah.
You are doing this. Stop doing that, dummy.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have friends that are going to really talk to you.
Yeah.
If you just like kid glove everything with guys, there's a level of, I feel there's a level of almost disrespect in that. Because I don't really need you to treat me with kid gloves.
Yeah.
But doing so almost, it's kind of childish. Like, I'm not your kid. I'm your friend. Talk to me like I'm your friend. Like, sit next to me in the locker room. We blew a play. We lost the game. Be real.
Yeah.
Don't come and be like, oh, it's okay. We'll get him next time. Like, okay, we may get him next time. What we do wrong? What do we got to fix?
Yeah.
Because there's a competitive spirit in men that's there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean competitive like you always have to beat the other guy, but like there is this like carnal installation of us pursuing victory for things, overcoming hard things, being asked to do hard things and expected for it to work out or come out. But also being sensitive and tender to be the protector and provider for our wives and wives. No, not wives. Our wives. Yeah, not my wives. Collectively, our wives. Yeah.
I get you.
Our children, our communities, our churches, our places of business, our friendship circles. Like, we are supposed to lead.
Yeah.
And so with leadership, I think in leadership and in friendship, like, just really talk to me. You want to really be my friend? Talk to me.
Yeah.
Don't dance around words. Oh, he's not going to be offended, or tell me what's up.
Yeah. If
you're not telling me what's going on, I'm not even sure you love me.
Wow. Man, that right there, I mean, if you just stop to think about the people you have in your life, your inner circle, right? And if you've got people that are not really challenging you, then this is a wake-up call, right? Because you said it yourself. Listen, you don't want to treat people with kid gloves. At the end of the day, that you're not serving them. You're not serving them. That you're doing a disservice, and that's both ways, right? With the people we interact with, those that we are that we call friends, and then those that call us friends as well. So thank you for that.
Look at Job's friends. Yeah. Go read the book of Job.
Job. Well, look at his wife.
Well, right. But my point is, like, go back and actually read Job cover to cover, like from the beginning to the end. Yeah. He goes from like having everything to losing everything, complaining about everything. Yeah. His friends come to his aid. And then he like tells his friends, "I hate you all. Stop talking to me." Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then another friend comes, but in the end, he ends up. He ends up acknowledging the magnitude of God, because God is like scolding him. Who are you? Did you create the light and the dark? Did you create the wind and the waves? Yeah. Did you create? And it kind of puts him in his place. Yeah. It wasn't, oh, I'm so sorry. And well, maybe if you could just come and trust me again, then maybe your life. That's not like that. Yeah. It's, who are you to da-da-da-da-da? Yeah. I am the one who did. So I can't then sit here and go, oh, yeah, we're men of faith. I believe in the Bible. And also just make sure you're talking politely all the time.
Yeah. Expand on that a little bit.
So there's a time for that. I think it has context. I think it has to
Yeah.
do with some self-awareness and being aware of the situation.
Yeah.
There are times where you have to talk politely and delicately to people because they can't take anything more than that. You and I need to know that about things.
Yes.
We need to be mature enough to see in a situation that, okay, this is a time you can dig in, and this is a time where you just got to listen.
Yeah.
And let them cry it out. Let them freak out for a second.
Yes.
And then ask your questions. And then, like, you have to be really aware, especially if someone's going through a crisis moment, okay?
Or a tragedy.
And I'll be straight up serious about this.
Yeah.
Someone comes up for prayer and they're feeling suicidal.
Yeah.
That is not the time to be knife handing someone in the face.
Yeah.
Like, like, that's not it.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
what's going on? What's causing this? Where are you safe right now? Are people around you safe? What do you actually need? There's other questions, and I'm not trained in these specific things, but for this example, you have to know what's going on. Read the room.
Yeah.
If someone is admitting to you that they've made a big failure and a mistake, they've stepped outside of the marriage, they've cheated at work, they've lied, or they've committed a crime or something like that, it's like, hey, you need to still address those things because you have to talk about what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
If the pit's 10 feet deep and you only go to foot 6, there's more work to do.
Mm.
And the way you get that work done can look a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
But there are times when you have to be very sensitive to the situation and the scenario in order that they will still incline their ear to you. If you just constantly are like knife handing people, then at some point that's all you're going to get marked as. Oh, there goes Robert the knife hand.
Yeah.
He's just gonna
sharpening his blade.
He's just gonna he's sharpening his blade on the way, and then here you come with like as iron sharpens iron. Okay, like your hat.
Like my hat.
Yeah, like that doesn't literally mean you have to always be sharpening your sword on the way to come and talk to me.
Yeah.
Because the other thing too is like that you can get marked that way.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like in a public shallow way, like, oh, I don't want to be called that. No, like you can't always just be that person. That's not good leadership either.
Right.
Jesus has, look, God in the Old Testament, and there's times when he is straight up like, you guys messed up, here's the consequence. And then the people suffer the consequence of that. And then there's times when it's like, I'll give you another chance. And here's another chance. And here's another chance. And here's another chance. Would you like one more chance? and that's the way that the parable is told.
Yeah.
And there's still the consequence of the choice you make or don't make in that. But again, if you go looking for these parallels in the word, you're going to find them.
Yeah.
And you're going to see that everything and every scenario can be applicable to something else that's already there.
Yeah.
That you can draw the wisdom from and go, how should I approach this? What? And then ask God in the moment, what is it you need me to say? And what is it you need me to just hold? Maybe the person's even ready for me to say what I got to say yet.
Yeah.
There's a time to say those things too. It might be over here later in a couple days or maybe a week or month or whatever it is. And then you have to be able to give people good counsel. You come to me and you're having a specific problem and I am ill-equipped to help you with it. I need to say that. I need to say, thank you for telling me that. I want you to have the right help. I am ill-equipped. I'm going to help you find the right person who can spiritually walk you through this thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm not doing any service to that person if I can't walk them through it.
Right.
So, but if I love you as a brother, let me help you find the person. If you don't know them already, let's get you to the person who can help you walk through that arm in arm. And then see the fruit of that. Yeah.
Man, the last several years, you've had to go through that journey and it's not been easy as you've been sharing with us here. And I know recently you've really been challenged. And I know you've had some stuff going on with family.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, this, I think it was in the last 12 months, 12 or 18 months.
Yeah.
You had a situation with Jen.
Yeah.
Right. So tell us a little bit about that and how God has been sustaining her and you guys as a couple and as a family.
Yeah. So here's the quick details to kind of set the stage.
Yeah.
September of 2023, we take in four additional girls to our house that we brought in. So we have our three daughters and four more, 7 girls in the house that we're helping raise in a situation that they needed a place to be.
Yep.
And so because of our long duration of friendship with this family, the girls came and lived with us.
You guys stepped in during a very difficult time. Okay.
Fast forward from September 23 to December of 23, Jen gets diagnosed with breast cancer. So December 14th, this December 14th, 2023, we learned that Jen has breast cancer.
It's 2 years ago. Okay. Yeah.
While raising additional kids, while raising our own kids, right. While still having our production company, doing all the stuff we're already doing. And then then cancer's on your doorstep, and you're like, I did not invite this visitor to my life, and they're here. I don't like this. What are we going to do? And there's this wide range of emotions and thoughts and prayers that come all of a sudden. Like, okay, God, we're going to do this. You already promised me things that I'd see when I'm 90, 95 or whatever. You told me these things are for me. So I already believe at the onset that this is just a pit stop. And we're going to get back on the road and we're going to keep going again. Yeah. Or this might just slow me down for a little bit. Yeah. Fast forward to April of 2024. Jen has surgery, and she goes right into recovery, and she recovers like a champ. Like, she was devout, and she had maintained prayer the whole time. Yeah. We prayed for her too. Yes. Friends prayed for her, but she also prayed for herself. And she did not just leave the heavy lifting to everybody else. In fact, and she'll say this, there are moments where she felt, and is probably true, that she's like, I was interceding on my behalf even more than you guys were sometimes. And that was true. Yeah. And there's days where she doesn't know how she's feeling about this. Like, I'm have this thing that takes some people out. Is what God promised me over here still going to happen? Yes, of course it's going to happen. Yes. Because He told me it was going to happen. I believe Him, and He loves me, so I believe that this is just the road it's going to go to get there. Yeah. She had also heard years ago that something would happen like this to her, like 8 years ago. Really? Yes. But that it would be a open window to faith and action that would bring people into relationship with God. Wow. Which has now happened. So there's a variety of layers of things happening here. Yes. Jen has breast cancer. Yeah. We're walking through that, all the appointments on, well, should you do this? Should you do that? Yeah. Do you want to go on this medication or not? Do you want to have this procedure or not? Yeah. Making all those choices, believing in faith, being prayed over, being prayed with, doing regular life stuff. All while knowing God had told me that something like this was going to happen in my life, specifically cancer, like about 8 years ago, and that it would cause this outcome over here. So we go through April of 24, May of 24, she's recovering. Three of the four girls moved back with the mom and dad in July of 24. Mm-hmm. And so it's just our three girls again, and their oldest. So we still have an extra kid with us right now, but one of the four. And we go through the summer, and her sister falls ill. Like, actually fell down the stairs, but had already been hurt before. Oh, and her sister broke her back. And well, she had to have back surgery because of just disc compression in her back and other issues. I can't pronounce the medical term. I can't remember how to say it right. So she had surgery, and they're looking at Jen. How did you maintain your faith during this when you had cancer and you're like in the hospital and you're immobile and you can't move? And you're like, God, why is this happening to me? And it opened these conversations for Jen's sister to hear from Jen about this thing. Yeah. And but going through it with cancer, and then it like lifted her spirit, and they had already been kind of 1 foot in the church, not the second foot, and not like fully planted and knees knelt, and then it became that. Wow. And they like have completely been like, oh my gosh, I want to know everything now. I want to learn everything now. Yeah. I'm going to organize and orchestrate my life around what God has says for us now, as opposed to, God, we do that on Sunday. And then when we come home after Sunday, we go back to whatever we were doing. And so their entire life order being God-centered first has now finally happened after all these years. And through the situation that would sideline most people. Because it has, and it could have sidelined Jen too, but it's like there was a stubborn refusal for it to happen. Yeah. And prayer and intercession along the way too. Yes. And so grateful for doctors as well as God's healing. Yeah. Like there's some things about her recovery that actually you can't explain. You can't explain like medical terms. Like her speed of recovery, rate of recovery, and how healthy she is now post recovery is like it's uncanny. Wow. Like her energy is like more and better, and her strength, like everything is everything. Her countenance has changed, and all for the better. Wow. But through this is what led her sister and her husband into this like rootedness of faith that was kind of like that, like shallow faith before.
Yeah.
And I don't mean shallow as in an insulting way. I mean it like, when you talk about putting the seed on the rock and it doesn't grow roots, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of faith. There's still seed on the rock. It's just that it doesn't really grow and become fruitful.
Yeah.
And just in these last several months, it has completely changed their family dynamic, their life, their outlook. And Jen is in such a great place of health, emotionally and spiritually and physically, that is undeniable. It's undeniable of what is at work within her that has now caused that outcome that was promised all the way back here.
Amen.
That family would be redeemed and that they would be fully surrendered through that. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
How do you just explain that in unfaithful full terms? I don't know. Is there science to back that up, Robert?
No.
I mean, is there archaeological findings or something in the stars and heavens that, because magical dust that makes it happen? I don't know of anything that just materially makes that kind of stuff happen.
People will search.
Yeah.
And they will try to figure it out
but they're all searching for the same thing. They're all searching for the truth.
Oh yeah.
And the truth of the word, and he is him being the truth of all truths.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's searching for. They rest their head on other things.
Yeah. Wow.
And you can dissect that, and you can do an autopsy on that on your own till you're blue in the face, and you're going to end up finding all the same stuff I found. And all these people that make arguments about the Bible and faith, like they're going to keep making these arguments because they made them forever.
Mm-hmm.
They made them forever. They're going to continue making them, but it doesn't sidestep you have to like walk around things and pretend they're not true in order to continue believing what you believe.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is there's the evidence of what has happened, right? The evidence of scripture and places, people, time. Yeah. And then there's the testimony that, you can't deny. Like, hey, I was here and I was on a path to destruction, or I was on a path of illness and disease, and now medical science can't explain it. My faith actually defined it, and now I'm healed. Yeah, and it's really you cannot deny the power of somebody's personal story that they walk through, right? Just like when you went through, that dark time. And you went through all of these things kind of crumbling, you were standing in the ashes, you could tell me about it. I could go, wow, and I could visualize you in ashes, right? But the power of that testimony, only you experience that. Yeah,
it's your story. It's my story. Like, no one can take my story away. My personal record of life and living is my own record.
Yes.
As is yours, if you're agnostic or even if you're atheist. Like, you're going to have your own record.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're asking of yourself and of God, whose record is it really?
Yeah.
Is it his record? It's like this idea of co-authoring. Like, Jesus, and I'll say it this way. So Jesus had his calling upon his life, right? To die for all man's sins. Yeah. Okay. But he had disciples. Did he really need disciples? If he's Jesus, does he really need anybody ever? No, he doesn't, right? But he had disciples.
Right.
Okay. So he had helpers along the way to go and preach a good word and to reach out. And so it's his story. Yeah. But it's also other people telling his story through their lived events, eyewitness accounts. Yeah. And then sharing that with others that then helps kind of spread that word and that truth of the divinity to other people that are not knowing. Yeah. And the same is for us too. Yeah. Because if we adopt and accept the role as a disciple, elevate yourself to that, right? Yeah. Okay. If he says, I'm going to depart from you and I will leave you the power that allows you to do even greater than what I have done. Ooh. Do we believe that or not?
Watch out.
And I'm not trying to be preachy about it, but do you believe it or not? Do you think you can go out this door and go heal someone's sight? Can you? I've seen it done. Yeah. I watched it happen to my friend's son, and I was standing right there. Yeah. And this kid's almost legally blind and wears Coke bottle glasses his entire life. Yeah. And then that is believing for sight, walks up and says, I want my sight, says I want my sight, gets prayed over his eyes to obey and fall into line and see clearly right away, and he sees. How do you explain that? Yeah. How do you say, oh yeah, he just snap my fingers. Now, well, God's not a vending machine God. No, correct. But things that you believe for and have faith for and demonstrate your faith to him for, he can and will. In those circumstances, he can do those things.
Yeah.
Because if it's happened and it's happening, you can't say that it hasn't.
Yeah.
So that means it is possible for people who have that level of faith, that mustard seed, if you will. So there's the story that we carry, our own story, whether we give Jesus credit for or not, God credit for or not. The disciples had the same choice.
Mm-hmm.
They can deny their presence and walking with Jesus and then just tell these fun stories. Can't they? Yeah, I had this friend, his name was Jesus. Man, the universe did some amazing things with him.
Good times.
The universe did this for me when I was with him.
Yeah.
I watched the universe provide all it.
Yeah.
Like this, it's not just language. It's that belief that's underneath that language that's revealing to you whether these people are telling the story of the testimony or if they're just they're assigning responsibility and acclaim to something else that's not God.
And that I mean, we can go really deep into that too, because our culture, society today is full of that. As the Lord described in, the last book of the Bible, what we would see in the end days, right? Where people would no longer, even within the church, right? We live in the first time period ever where you have people that call themselves Christians that don't believe in a literal creation. There are people that sit there.
I think that's like being a fan of a sports team, though.
You know what I mean?
That's like, I really love the Chiefs. Okay.
Yeah.
Like you don't play for the Chiefs. You're not on the team. Like
Right.
you're just a fan. You're sitting in the highest seat of the stadium. You're barely in the stadium, and you're just yelling, "That was a terrible call. You shouldn't have done that." Like, get on the field and play the game.
Yeah.
Then we can talk, and then we have a different conversation.
Right. That's true. That's
Again,
true.
not to be like confrontational, but like you can't have that conversation with me yelling from the cheap seats.
Right. Yeah. I thought you might mention the Chargers, but that
no, they're not.
In San Diego. They were in San Diego.
I say the Chiefs because I think they're either they're really loved, devoutly loved, or devoutly hated.
Yeah.
So I figure I'd use them as a primary example,
Right.
And keeping with the football theme. But what I was going to tell you about that is like I know that that's happening. But that's when we pray for the scales from the eyes to be lifted, and that they would see the foolishness of that, but also be curious enough to investigate why they believe that, and then find themselves at the truth of what actually is. And that's the same for people who are kicking the tires of faith, investigating the Bible and Jesus. They're agnostic. Maybe they were in the church and they're not. They're coming back to the church, or people come to the church for the first time. You know what's crazy is some of the most devout people I know are people that were like atheists their entire life, and they found God and the truth of the Bible, and then now they're like scholars of it. Like because for so long, the intellectual input of what it takes to believe in non-faith things drives the argument for why faith sucks or doesn't exist. Yeah. And then you take that same skill set and you apply it to what is true and founded, it goes on fire. It's like a rapid mass fire.
Wow. And we're seeing people get curious like that. Even people that are, celebrity type, like what's this guy?
Russell Brand. Look at Russell Brand. Like he's having this complete life transformation because of his curiosity.
That curiosity.
Because there's and he's the primary example, but this has happened so many generations before us, just not in this public of a light, possibly, due to internet and podcasting and all that stuff.
I think that has a lot to do with it,
But that heart change, again, described, it's in the Bible. Russell Brand is, I think, a sign of an awakening that has been kind of projected by people in like the faith, like seeing world for years. Yeah. Like I remember back in 2000, I want to say it was 16 or 18, Jen told me, she's like, I keep having visions of people in Hollywood coming to, like big names coming to Hollywood. Yeah. And one day she wrote in her book, like Justin Bieber. Yeah. And I was like, and this is back when like he was like the thing, right? Yeah, yeah. It was probably longer than 6 years ago. Yeah. How do you explain that? We don't know. I don't know him. I don't have my thumb on the scale of his life. Yeah. I'm not imparting any word to him. Like God can get to him.
Yes.
God can get to Russell Brand.
Yeah.
God can get to whoever he wants. And and I'll say this too. How many times in the Bible in the New Testament is God like hanging out with misfits, telling them the truth and then getting to them and then turning their life over? I'll follow you. Yeah. I will do what you say.
Yeah.
I will be led by you. And that's exactly what we see now. It's a direct parallel.
Yeah.
And these people have had everything. They've tried everything. They've experienced all the things that I'm not as interested in experiencing.
Yeah.
You're not interested in experiencing.
Right. Yeah. I don't have to go through all this stuff. Yeah.
And then still, they can find themselves at a place of redemption. And I think that is a catalyst for a like mass awakening that's happening right now. Some of it is like very quiet. Some of it's very public. And the public part hasn't even think of it like a triangle. The very public, very well seen part has a large part underneath it. That's all going, oh, wow, I see what's happening up there.
Yeah.
And I'm right here to receive it. I'm right here to listen to that. I'm right here to check that out.
Yeah.
And you see it. I mean, I'm seeing it clearly in lots of places.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's not just, I mean, it's happening in business.
Yeah.
It's happening in finance. It's happening in politics to some degree.
Yeah.
Definitely in entertainment.
Yeah.
And even there's becoming more of a chasm in the church, which is a reflection of what's going on. Yeah. More a chasm in the church between those who are like, I'm going to say the truth even if you don't like it.
Yeah.
But it's still true.
Yeah.
Versus, well, we're going to kind of tell you enough for you to come here.
Yeah.
But then we're going to just say, yeah, just take it up with God. If you're not sure about this or that, or what you should say here or there, what you should believe this or that, instead of telling you the word says this.
Yeah.
Well, go to the word and go make your own answer. Like that's not what the original early church was.
Right.
Even Jesus's ministry was not like, it was like, see for yourselves, not go and think about and wonder and make up your own answer for yourselves.
Yeah.
And now the division, but not the division, but like this, the distance between those kind of camps is very broad.
I agree. No, we see that, and we saw it during COVID too.
Sure.
During COVID, where some churches got really, there was a separation between those that were, kind of going with the flow and not confronting things, and others that were, that were saying, "Hey, listen, we're." I think there was wasn't there a guy? What is his name? Musician. Let Us Worship. He didn't he start in California?
Yes, Sean Fugt.
Sean
Foyt.
Foyt.
Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce names that are spelled that way.
Yeah, right.
He started here.
Yeah, he started. And it was
he would do events at our with our church and our youth group and stuff.
That's awesome.
Here in San Diego.
I saw him in West Palm Beach when he was out there. But it was just interesting. It's worship. You know what I mean? And people had opinions about worship. And I'm like, okay, let's just think about this for a second. We have opinions about worship, yet that's what we're called to do, right?
Yeah. We're supposed to do that.
Right. Yeah. So I can see that. I do see that even in our culture, in business especially, I do see that people are becoming a little bit more, they're kind of coming out of the shadows in a way.
Yeah.
Right. You see it in management. You see it in different segments and pockets in business. There's a group that I'm a part of, a Christian Business Association of the Palm Beaches. And man, I was so encouraged when I first went to a meeting and I just saw these men and women of God that are dedicated not just to doing business, but really about the gospel, the love for people and for one another, and making sure that we're equipping each other so that we can go out and then do the work through business. And I'd never seen it quite that way before. I understood it to be that way, but this was a very intentional and very well-organized group who's rooted in wanting to make sure that people are equipped, right? Because these are our assignments. God has put us out in the marketplace with assignments. He's given you gifts, talents, and abilities that he specifically has ordained for you and anointed you to be in this arena called the marketplace.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see more people become in tune with that and understand that that's a calling that God has given them.
Yes.
It's not just from the pulpit.
Yes.
Your pulpit, or for lack of a better term, right? Your the ground, right? Is the marketplace.
We're I'm going to say this as a declarative statement. We are to affect culture, not be infected by culture. And that transcends business as well.
Yeah.
Like we should set the pace and course for business culture rather than just be infected by the secularized culture of business.
Yeah.
What has happened is that thing for so long is we yield ourselves to the secularized culture of business and participate in it. And then we become of the world. Right?
Yeah.
Versus set the tone and set the pace and set the management style and the leadership standards, which Jesus did, which he asked his disciples to do.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that's so weird.
Oh
right?
my goodness. That's hilarious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but they weren't business people. Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
They were business people. Or they were people
absolutely.
conducting business, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
And then we call them business owners nowadays, founders, and I'm the chief visionary, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's great. Whatever you want to call yourself. His disciples were people that were of work and works in some form or fashion. And so we're supposed to do that, even though it's not explicitly written that way, like go be a faithful person in the business arena in the marketplace. It doesn't say that, but it implies that.
Yeah.
It definitely implies that.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that if we're to make impact on this earth and we're to then carry out in the same way that disciples carried out, but we have to get up and go to work every day, then where do you think we're called to do that? At our place of work,
Bingo.
on the way to and on the way from, and around the people that we're.
Yeah. I hear you. I'm reminded of John Maxwell. He and I'm going to quote him. He said he was doing a talk, and he said, remember those bracelets that came out were pretty popular. The "What Would Jesus Do?"
Yeah.
WJ.
Yeah. WWJD.
He says, you know what? I'm going to come out with another one, and he did. That says, just do what Jesus did.
Yeah.
don't wonder what would he do. Just do what he did.
Yeah.
Right. Man, I know time flies, and I've enjoyed our conversation, Andy.
Yeah.
And we've talked about your struggle in business and what you went through, and kind of the road, not just physically and mentally, but also spiritually, right? And then recently with your wife going through cancer and seeing her resilience and her faith, and how that faith inspired even her family, and God has been faithful with promises that he gave her.
Yeah.
And he's been showing her visions even about what might be happening in certain segments of society like Hollywood. And the Bible talks about, signs and wonders that we will see, and visions that people will have in the latter days. So it's been awesome to kind of have this opportunity to share some of your stories. And I've known you for a long time, my friend, and it's been my pleasure, my honor to know you, and now I get to share you with this audience and this program. I always like to end with a final question for every guest. And what does a Godfident man mean to you?
I really like that you have kind of merged these words of God. I think I hear God fearing and confident. So Godfident, and I know it could just be God on its own, but there's a part of being God fearing, like understanding like the magnanimousness of God. Is it just one S? Magnanimous. Yeah, it's an echo. Yeah. Someone turn that reverb down over there. Yeah, the magnitude of God.
Yeah.
And then also the confidence that he can give us as men to do the things like the men in the Bible did. And I feel that we have such a crisis of confidence and crisis of boldness in manhood, because it's constantly under scrutiny from people that want to undermine manhood and undermine the godly positioning of manhood, as much as they are willing to go along with things that undermine the womanhood that God had intended to, and the sacred connection between the man and woman that God had created to be a certain way too. So when I think of Godfidence or the Godfident man, I think about someone who is God-fearing first and serving second. Is, okay, I recognize who God is in my life, and I'm going to do what he asked me to do. And I will be confident in doing so, because if he's called me to do something, and I've heard his voice audibly, clearly, my helpmate has confirmed it, my friends have said, I've seen this for you, and they're all, let's say, not BSing me. Did he just say Godfident and BSing in the same sentence? Yes, I did.
Is that a biblical term?
Right. Yeah, it is. It is. Because the bull, when they were, I'm just kidding.
What translation is it? The NIV? Or
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I say that in, like, as long as everyone is attuned, and the people that are saying this thing to you, that you go do whatever God asks you to do. Because God asks people in the Bible, men, to do some wild things that don't make sense, that are contrary to what would add up in the war, in a battle. Like, no, don't take 30,000 men, take 3,000. No, don't take 3,000, take 300. What? Take 300. Why? Bring me those loaves and that bread. Get that bread, the loaves and the fish, and multiply it. Like, that doesn't make sense. He'll also put us in positions where we can demonstrate that confidence of our God-fearedness in order to attract inward people curious about that same thing. Where's this coming from? Why are you like this? Not in a scrutinous way. Like, hey, why are you so weird?
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, no, how are you so confident in this? Why do you believe this to be true? Why do you think we should take this route versus that route?
Yeah.
And then you can demonstrate your faith in the middle of that. And being willing to do so.
Yeah.
A lot of men right now feel isolated. They clam up. Nah, my story's not interesting. I'll try to wrap up my idea here, which is in this setting with the cameras in the studio, I hear the 3 same problems or hesitations in business that I hear in faith. Right? The first thing is, I don't like the way I sound or look on camera.
Yeah.
Great, but we walk in public every day, so clearly you're okay with people seeing you that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Ooh.
You wore your hat, your glasses, your jeans, like
that's reality.
So you're gonna show up to my office this way. You're gonna be on camera that way.
Yeah, yeah.
You're clearly okay going to the store this way. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the equivalent to that for me is like your story matters. It matters because you're gonna show up to Jesus the way you show up to people around, just like the way people showed up to him in the Word.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, when people hesitate to like make content or like share, they go, "Oh, well, I don't know what I would talk about. Like, I don't know. Like, wait a minute. Aren't you a business person trying to market and promote your brand? Don't you talk every single day about the questions people ask you, FAQs? Like, you reply by text, by phone call, by email. So you clearly know what to say. You've been in business for 30 years. How did you make it 30 years without knowing what to say? Same thing in your faith. Like, what do you say? Tell your story.
Yeah.
Tell your examples. Tell like we've talked here today. This happened in my life. This is what I did. Here's what happened. Like, here's the outcome. So on the business sense, we talk about that with cameras and content, but in the faith sense, tell your story. And then the third thing, the people tell me, "Oh, I don't want to make content," or "I don't know how to do that," is they lack a structure and a system. And the Word is a system. Praying is a system. Yeah. Yielding yourself to what God's asking you is a system. And so when you can have routine in your faith, whether that's going to church on Wednesdays and Sunday, or men's prayer, or it's I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to read my Word, or I'm going to read the Word before I go to bed, or I'm going to do this, put into place some regular routines that will help you grow in your faith and your confidence as a man. Awesome.
Those are great next steps, right?
Yeah.
I mean, recognizing that you have a story, you're living it every day. So that's awesome. And then just, knowing that if you don't have things in place, systems, those 2 things alone are I think good reminders for all of us. I mean, we're starting a new year. I'm not a big, New Year's resolution guy. I'd like to have a theme or a word that and goals that I set short term and things that I want to do, but never really, resolution more. What about you?
Well, yes, but what I'm thinking about when you're saying this is like our God is a God of order and creativity.
Yeah.
He is the creator.
Yes.
And also with order. And so wherever you're called to create, like you're doing this, you've been called to create inside order so that it can be used and shared with people.
Yeah.
And when it comes to New Year's resolutions or starting a new chapter in life, turning the page, however you want to say it, you can do that in a unique way that the Creator created you to be within the system that He designed for us to live in. And I think if you can distill what that is for you, and then do that, there's going to be a harvest and fruitfulness in that.
Amen.
In the same way, if you're listening to this part and you do not feel that way, you feel like you're out of order.
Yeah.
God can help put order into your life, into your behaviors, into your patterns, and he can waken up the creativity he put you within. So you aren't feeling constrained. But if I say yes to God, he's going to like clamp me down. I'm going to be like a slave to the. No, he doesn't actually do anything like that when you yield yourself for full use in the creative space that he's created order for. It actually gets to go to the boundaries of all that order and the fullness of it.
Wow.
Do that in the new year.
Amen. Wow, man. Thank you for that encouragement. I love it. On that note, I want to finish with a couple things. Number one, if you like what you heard, you enjoyed the content, please remember to like this channel and subscribe. Now, if you are listening to this through any of our podcast platforms, and make sure that you also let us know that you appreciate the content and share it with others. Last thing, I wanted to make sure that, if you want to learn more about what Andy's doing, and if you want to learn more about, how he might be able to help you in terms of marketing and putting out, that's kind of what you do, buddy, right?
Yeah, it's all video marketing. Yep.
Yeah, video marketing. So how does somebody get in touch with you? How do...
Let's put the link to the website in the description box. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it in the description box below. If you're watching on one of your favorite podcast platforms, you can see it in the show details.
Okay.
We'll put the website there, and you can reach out to me and my wife, Jen, and we'll be happy to listen to what kind of creative project you have up your sleeves.
Awesome. Thank you so much. God bless you guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.